Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the panel Hidrología Subterránea on our first Making Groundwater Visible from the Groundwater Project. And I'm your host, Everton Oliveira. Thank you so much for joining us. Please upload your picture watching the event and tag it at the Groundwater to be featured on our social media pages. We count on you. Like and share our posts. Volunteer to help. Translate books into your mother language. Make a difference. Let's make the groundwater visible. Before we start, I would like to thank our sponsors for making this event possible and free for all of you. TDS, Technical Development Solutions from Saudi Arabia. Hidroplan, a consulting company from Brazil. G360 from the University of Guelph in Canada. Solinst Equipments from Canada. And Waterloo Barrier also from Canada. And also to all the individual donors. Without them, this noble endeavor would not be possible. Please join them. Donate if you are an individual, or add your name, add the name of your company as a sponsor to a game changer initiative. Thank you very much. Today, we will have inspirational stories, and it's particularly moving for me to be in front of two of the most famous hydrogeologists of our time. I had the pleasure to study on their book, and for a Portuguese speaking person like me, studying in Spanish was closer than English, so the literature in Spanish was available for us, or we would jump at it more easily. Independently of the language, the book was very good, and we had the pleasure to study on a great book. And more than that, I'm really touched by having them in front of me today, and for them to share the same enthusiasm that they had when they produced the book for the Groundwater Project, because I see as a main goal in their lives is to share knowledge with those who are interested in the groundwater science. So I'd like to thank Emilio Custodio and Ramón Llamas from Spain to be here with us today for this great event. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have you in front of me. Thank you very much. Please, if there is someone who doesn't know you, could you make a brief introduction? Who are you? Just 2 lines first. Emilio?
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot for the kindly invitation for this talk in the presentation of the Groundwater Project, and especially to John Cherry and yourself for this invitation. Really, it is an honor to share time with key figures in groundwater hydrology and hydrogeology, and today also with Professor Llamas, which is currently a prominent hydrogeologist and a sound thinker on water resources and their social implications. And this second fact for me is also very important. My career is a complex, broken line. This is also the case of many of those persons that became engaged in new fields and branches of science and engineering, especially at the beginning. This was the case of water hydrology or hydrogeology in the early 1960s. I don't know, we will not discuss the difference between the two. Professor Llamas will explain later the early, as he produced most of the successful ideas, taking advantage of his good relationships with the public water administration and the academia. During the period Dr. Llamas was living in Barcelona, he invited me to work with him and to get experience from pioneering experts involved in his early team. This allowed me to become a second derivative and a tool to shape his ideas, and I am glad to fulfilling this role. Was not directly a student of Dr. Llamas, but I learned a lot from him. Working with him has been for me great, and especially because his quick and bright personality compensated my slow and delayed behavior, and he knew how to take advantage of my work capacity. This allowed fulfilling me part of the mission assigned by God to me. Going to your questions, I was trained in engineering with emphasis in chemical and nuclear engineering and later in energy resources. At the same time, I was interested in geology. It is due to the influence of some excellent teachers and fellows, and also because mountain trekking was one of my hobbies. In 1963, Dr. Llamas was the responsible for the Office of the Public Works Geological Survey in Barcelona, and also was a professor of the Industrial Engineering School, and he asked me to help teaching geology principles and also in solve some hydrogeological problems that at that moment were completely new. This was the beginning of close to 60 years of collaboration on groundwater hydrology that has shaped my full life. Logically, I started almost from nothing. Field experience I needed derived from groundwater studies organized by Dr. Llamas and by the progressive involvement in the complex in some areas of Spain. In that time, to continue my work, I established good relationships with the Public Works Geological Survey and the Geological and Mining Institute of Spain. And actually, I became later on the general director during 7 years of this institution. Were some good successes of groundwater exploitation in Spain since the late 19th century. But in the 1950s and 60s, the situations in some areas of the country, especially in areas close to the Mediterranean and close to Barcelona concretely, in some areas they approach intensive use and of the water intrusion and many others. But they call public attention because until 1985, groundwater was administratively a private domain. Then the problems were in this private domain that has to be solved by the groundwater users. The river water organizations, which were responsible for public water administration and management, most of the time hydroelectric water demand were neither interest nor have the knowledge and trained personnel to deal with the coming serious interferences with a few exceptions. In the 60s, university teaching on groundwater was almost inexistent. Training material was scarce. What was available derived mostly from publications from United States Geological Survey and the corresponding organizations in France and in Germany. When I started, I did know almost nothing about aquifers and groundwater, but I used as much as possible my training in hydraulics, chemistry, nuclear physics, and geology to progress, adding the experience obtained in the first fieldworks in alluvial and carbonate aquifers in Catalonia, and also at the same time in the volcanic Canary Islands. Then these are these 2 points of starting. The transfer of knowledge derived from working with Dr. Llamas and some young collaborators he has that were starting just transferring geological knowledge into hydrogeological knowledge was for me essential. Much of the work that was done at that time was in self-training with the help of books and scientific publications, participation in European, UNESCO, and International Atomic Energy Agency and IH organized seminars, in workshops and meetings, field visits, and I complemented a summer short course in Las Cruces, New Mexico, in the United States. For me, it was very important the contact with French professors and Jean Margat, and also related relationships, French Davis in Tucson, Arizona, among other persons. My doctoral thesis was on hydrological functioning of the alluvial and deltaic aquifers near Barcelona that were extended by applying hydrogeochemistry and water and carbon isotopes as key tools to quantify groundwater flow. Part of my work focused on fields that others were not considering at that time because they have another formation. And it was directed to groundwater resources evaluation and included hydrogeochemistry and environmentalist isotopes with emphasis due to the place of work in coastal aquifers, volcanic islands, groundwater-dependent wetlands, diffuse recharge, artificial recharge, and hydrogeological systems. At the same time, Dr. Llamas and myself taken into account groundwater use related aspects that in the 60s were not considered a part of hydrology. This is the case of quantity and quality in water resources integration, the environmental, economic, and social implications of groundwater use, and the administration and legal aspect of groundwater intensive use. This to the relationship directly with groundwater. The scientific and technical development of groundwater has evolved to become a multifaceted natural resources with complex environmental and social implications. So ethics are involved as well as the moral issues anchored in independent, natural, and God-established principles. Ethics and moral in a moment that like now that science and engineering are far-reaching and powerful, and the effect on humans and the environment affect from the local to national and regional scales, and tend to be currently globalized and managed by a facet defined organizations loosely controlled by a few.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was very well done. Thank you. Please, Dr. Ramon, will you, Ramon, please say a few words?
Well, thank you. Well, first, let me tell you that I feel very honored by your invitation. But now I will be 90 years old this year, and then my situation is becoming less and less. But with people like Emilio Custodio, whenever you see something that is Custodio, Llamas think that 90% is Custodio and 10% is Llamas. He's a very hardworking person, but he always likes to be the last one, but this is not true. Really, whenever you see something by Custodio and Llamas, 90% is Custodio, 10% is Llamas, that's it.
But he says it's the opposite.
Anyway, well, the situation, well, my congratulations because of your initiative that is very, very useful. Really, the situation concerning groundwater in the world has changed a lot during the last 20 years or 30 years. Now is groundwater was almost ignored by most of the water planners. Now the situation is different. Even let me tell you, the European directive about water, that you know, has been important because it requires to make the water plans considering always what is called the groundwater bodies, or the aquifers, and telling what is going to be the plan and how to solve the problems if there are problems, etc. So this is a big thing. I think, nevertheless, still in many countries there is something that was called by an American hydrologist the hydroschizophrenia. So it's that the water planners usually they consider only surface water and forget groundwater. Now the situation is changing a lot. Even the European water directive requires the study all the groundwater bodies, all the aquifers in the planners for the very 6 years. So this is a great advance, but still there's many things to do. In Spain especially, I think has been a case of hydroschizophrenia in the sense that because of historical reasons, I detailed this situation in Spain in a meeting in Tucson 20 years ago, explaining what is the situation in Spain and why in Spain groundwater was ignored totally. It has changed a lot now, even with the European directive is easier to deal with this thing, but the situation has changed a lot. For instance, only one thing about, let's say, I was the first tenure professor of hydrogeology in the university Spanish system. Now there are at least 10 or perhaps 20 tenure or equivalent to tenure groundwater researchers in Spain. Some of them are very well known. One, obviously, Emilio is number one in that, but the situation has changed a lot. So groundwater cannot be forgotten now in Spain, and I think it is the same thing in some countries. So, as I told, in Spain, I was the first tenure assistant professor in the university, and now probably there are 10 or 15, perhaps 20 tenure professors in the Spanish university system teaching about groundwater. So it's a big change in even institutions. So the situation is very positive in this mean. And that has been influenced a lot. The book by Custodio Llamas, that really is not only a book by Custodio Llamas, it was a summary of a seminar that we organized in Barcelona, and then the head notes, the notes of these classes were printed in this book, and has been a very positive result of that, the book. So this book in internet has a lot of citations, but the question is that it was summary of the forum of a seminar held in Barcelona 50 years ago now, and has been continued for all this time. And almost 1,000 people mainly from Spain and Latin America has been students in this seven-month seminar, and I think this positive effect. Nevertheless, Emilio continues to work very hard in that. I am almost retired because I will be 90 years old this year, and I think is my capacity, my mind is not so like it was 5 or 10 years ago. So practically I do nothing now. What else may I tell to you? Well,
Ramon, I love to say I almost retired. I envy you. You say I almost retired at 90. I envy you. I would like to say the same when I'm 90, if I get there. I have a question for you guys. How was writing the book together? How was the experience? Because today, when we write something together, you send email to people and you have the book in your hands immediately. How was the experience at that time? Did you live in the same city?
The question is for Ramon or for me?
For both.
Yeah, Ramon first.
If I have well understood your question, the question is why this book, Emilio and Ramon? Well, this book is really should be a book about groundwater hydrology by Custodio, Llamas, and art, because this book was a summary of what we have in Barcelona, this long seminar, 7 months long, and then the book is a publication of the hand notes given to the students by different, all the professors, not only Emilio and myself, but there were perhaps 10 professors. But then it was decided these hand notes delivered to the students to publish them. And then the publishing company told, well, this is going to be groundwater hydrology by Custodio and Llamas, but should be Custodio and Llamas et al., because there are more authors than that. But this has been very useful, this book. But now the situation has changed a lot in Spain. As I mentioned to you, well, I was the first tenure professor 40 years ago in the Spanish university, and now there are probably 10 or perhaps 20 tenure professors on groundwater hydrology in the university and the research system of Spain. So it's a great difference.
Yeah. You, Emilio, how was it?
In that case, as Ramon said, the starting was notes for the international course. Immediately after starting the studies that Ramon organized in the area, we noticed that we needed to train people. And then we organized first a course for the public works administration. And we started to produce notes by the different professors. The second year, there was an international because they come people from many other countries, and we continue with this. And starting in 1967, at say 1974, we have a worth of documents. Well prepared. Every document was read by different people and was corrected and was reprinted, and was the material that was supplied to the students. And the formato was very close to a book. And then we said, how we not convert this into a book? And then Ramon organized the syllabus or the contents of the book, and we expanded it. We included things that at that moment were not admitted at hydrogeology because it was very far from classical hydrogeology. And with that, we decided to have an editor, and I was charged of the editor. And and I accepted this. Then I worked in Barcelona. Ramon was still early moved to Madrid, and we continue to contact by mail. Material was already there. There was an editor, and a large part of contributors were from the Public Works Administration or the Geological Survey that were in close contact. It facilitates to put things together and make corrections. And it allows that to finish the book in 4 years. I was editing it, and Ramón Llamas was looking for support, for economic support, for a publisher. And when we put everything together, we get the publisher in 1967, no 65, and in 1 year was published. We had no email, we had only phone, of papers to be corrected. 2 or 3, depends on the moment, persons typing things and correcting things. This was very important. It's something that now people doesn't understand how we can do this without this side people. But these side people were very nice because they were able to type formulas without knowing what they were typing. And this was the origin of the. Then you notice that the first edition of the book, the 76 edition, there was some errors and some corrections. This is a second edition trying to correct some name, but it has been only reprinted, not corrected more. And we don't receive real it, but we were able to reduce the number of errors.
I don't want to forget to congratulate for your initiative to promote the groundwater knowledge open to all the people. That is a very, very, very good idea, I think. And your water rule is known all over the world. And I think, I hope that you continue to do this job because it's a very important one, I think.
Thank you.
Nevertheless, for example, I think that the European directive about water, even is not perfect, is helping a lot also to asking to consider always the groundwater models. So how is the situation of the groundwater in every country? Still, the information is not very good, but it is improving. I think the situation in 20-30 years has changed a lot. Will change still more, mainly initiative is your initiative that I congratulate you because this initiative is very positive, very, very useful. I remember you came to Madrid, I think about 20 years ago or 15 years ago. You spoke here in Madrid, I think, in a meeting I organized. I cannot remember exactly the date, but I remember that you were here.
Let me ask you a question. When you produce the book, well, in Spain is a reference for groundwater. Is that mainly your influence, the influence of your book or the course that you produced? Because Spain is a reference for groundwater students. Many people from all over the world go to the groundwater course that you offered in Barcelona. Is a very famous place. Why was that? Because then when the contamination studies started, that's when Waterloo came to place, because then Waterloo became one of the most important. But then you had some places in US and Spain was a reference. What was your influence on that?
I don't know if I well understood your question. Well, the influence I think has been not only the influence of Emilio and myself, but the question that this seminar, this groundwater hydrology course has been working out for 50 years. And then about 1,000 people from Spain, Latin America has been in the group. And so the situation in Spain has changed a lot, as I mentioned previously. In 1972, I was the first tenure professor of hydrogeology in Spain, in the Spanish university system. And now there are probably between 20 and 20 people equivalent to tenure persons practically in all the universities of Spain, in most of the universities, and also in the institutions of the government. So still there is a lot of things to improve, but anyway, I think the situation is becoming better and better every day, I think. And I think that your initiative, this initiative, I cannot remember exactly the name, that you are doing in Waterloo. Well, Waterloo is very well known all over the world in groundwater, mainly because of the studies in isotopes and chemistry. And I think it's very, very, very important. It's a reference for everybody. And well, but now really for myself, I will be 90 years old this year. So I think it's time to really, my capacity, my intellectual capacity is decreasing every day. So I am very happy that people like you and all these people are taking continue even doing the things much better than we did, but it's important. Well, so I repeat my congratulations by your initiative. That is very important because even here in Spain, well, nobody is a prophet in his own land. And then the influence of the people from Waterloo, Canada, and the US Geological Survey are very important, I think. Let me tell you, I have a certain blame. It's not a blame, but a certain that I don't like Emilio. Emilio has worked a lot in Latin America, but he has not go enough time. For instance, he has never been to Stockholm, to the Water Week of Stockholm. And I think, well, you know, Emilio, his wife is from the Canary Islands. Every summer he goes to the Canary Islands. He has published now a book about hydrogeology of volcanic aquifers. And so, but in my opinion, Emilio is a kind of idol or a kind of reference in Latin America, but he should go more to Waterloo, to Stockholm, to the USA. But this is preaching the wilderness. He never agrees with me with this. He's really in love with Latin America, with Brazil, and also all the Latin American countries. I think it's a very good job, but I think the connection with you is really very, very, I am very happy with that because he has to be very much in contact with you, with your people, because it's almost the only defect that I found in the action on Emilio is that he loves so much Latin America connections that he forgets a little bit about Stockholm and Canada and the USA. Emilio, excuse me, but this is, I have told this many times, and I think you have capacity to deal with everybody. And I think it's very good. And even I am now finished practically. I mentioned before, in the next month I will be 90 years old. So I think my capacity, intellectual capacity is now more and more limited. So, Emilio, don't be angry with me because I mentioned that you have to have more connection with Canada, with the USA. Even you continue to be a kind of idol for the Latin American hydrogeologists. But it's possible to do both things. And I think this connection with Waterloo may be the beginning of a very, very important activity.
Well, I almost disagree with Ramón Llamas, as usual, in this topic. And for me, working in different parts of it has been very important because it's a country that has many facets. It's very different from one part to another. And extending this to Iberoamerica has been very, very, very important because there are a lot of situations that are not common to other places, and especially in the dry areas. We have learned a lot about hydrogeology in arid and hyper-arid areas that we couldn't get in other parts of the world. Then it has been working together with people that is also well-formed, that understand the problem, and we share not only the language, but also we share many things common in law, in administration, in the way of looking at the things. And there are now a series of centers that are very well connected with us. In Barcelona, fortunately, we continue with a groundwater group that is working now. Most of the people is completely younger than us. We have, by example, Jesus Carrera, that is well known worldwide as a bright hydrogeologist, and we continue to work in many places. And if the book that was closed in 1976, it's really in many aspects an old one. At that time, many topics were not considered. But if you look at the book, there are already the principles of contaminations, of isotopes, on hydrogeochemistry, and these ideas in some other books are not reproduced and still are there. There are very old ones, but there are. And they have been developed little by little by the hydrogeology group, producing new material that now forms part of the teaching. These new professors are giving in Barcelona, and the research they are carrying out. Well, there are voids. It's impossible to cover everything, but there is a second book, a shorter book, a second book that tried to select some topics that were not full covered, and now they can be also provide to the students new versions, young people. Then there is a continuation, and we just are finishing the fourth book, free book you can access directly in the internet, on topics that, well, there are classic topics, but are not fully covered in the literature, especially when we talk in languages that are not English, like recharge, like groundwater mining, like groundwater in volcanics, and these books are available. And this is a contribution, and this is an inheritance of the old book. The old book didn't produce everything. We continue to collect material. We continue to expand our teaching by adding new things. The course in the 76 and the course now is very different. There are many different topics. And we have tried with these new publications, these free access publications, we try to fill what is missing. And what we found is that some of the ideas that Ramon and me introduced in the old book that many people do accept, like isotopes, recharge through the balance of chloride coming from the atmosphere. Many of these ideas at that time was almost rejected. Now there are fundamentals very important to carry out the studies, especially in areas where there is not much information. Little by little, the book now it has been transformed, not only in teachings, but also in these new publications that they are continually appearing. And fortunately, the system we started is live. There is new people around. We are too old now at that moment, but new people, there is around.
I'm very happy with this connection of Emilio with you, because I think this is something that was a little bit missing. Emilio was very much, as I mentioned, really devoted to the Latin American experts. But now this connection with Waterloo might be a very important way to extend this. I am very happy with that. Not for me, I can do anything. I will be, as I mentioned previously, I will be 90 years old in the next month. So practically, I can do very little things now. But I am very happy that this your initiative to contact with Emilio, with me, but mainly Emilio is the key person now. He's still doing a lot of work. Is very useful for that. Okay.
So what is your expectation about the groundwater project? Because the groundwater project has been running for some time, and we have 10 books published, and we have maybe 200 more coming for the next few years, 2 or 3 years. So we have many material on groundwater. And what do you expect? What are your vision? Because you have a great experience. You've seen a lot of the groundwater evolution in the world. What do you think about that?
Well, ideas like this, they came from the 60s and was promoted by the French professors, was promoted by United Nations through UNESCO. But the problem at that time was the distribution of material. They produced the material, was almost impossible to distribute. Developed people, developed countries, they have enough money to buy commercial books, but not the poor books. Then this has been very important for the poor countries. But the problem with the poor countries is that distribution has been almost impossible. This is important to change this with the new system. Now we have not the need to distribute, and then we have internet, and this is the big news.
Yes.
We have another system. And there are many books, many publications that in the meanwhile cover the system. By example, the Geological Survey, the United States Geological Survey, they have a series of nice books, but they were not written as books. They are reports. And then the professional, the problem is the professional has to distinguish between what is a report, what is a professional report, and what is basics. Now, here now there is the opportunity of taking out what is marginal and focus in the center, but thinking that we try to think we are all connected with university, that the research is the most important, but most of the professionals are not researchers. They are just people that like books just to learn to do their job. And the main problem we have to face now is to make this material free for them, but oriented to their needs, not to research. And the material we have now, free access in internet, is mostly to research, related to researchers. This is a nice opportunity now to change a little, to focus on these people, and also something that is being done currently with this internet is to say this topic, look at other book. We started with the specialty and complete your knowledge in another place. This is bad because the people who approaches hydrogeology, they are not specialists. They have no time to look, and if they look for anything that is not connected. It takes a lot of time to understand, to connect, and then to translate. Then we need books that approaches the new things, but also there are the basics, and the reader has not the necessity to go to other material to complete the view he needs to understand the specialty. This is perhaps one idea.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and that's basically our objective. I agree with you. We have today people tend to study with papers, right, and not books. So you don't have the synthesis of the material. That's quite important. You are correct. You are correct. Okay. Ramon, you have something to say?
By your initiative, I hope that you are going to continue with that. I think the situation has changed a lot, at least in Europe, because of the European Directive of Water, because, for instance, now the participation, the transparency, the information to the people is much higher now. It has changed a lot, the situation. Still, there is a great many things to improve. For instance, one thing that is, in my opinion, requires more studies is the relation between the uses of groundwater and the economy. For instance, let me tell you one thing. In Spain, water irrigation, with 80% of the irrigation in Spain, of the economic value of irrigation, 80% of the water is used to produce 20% of the economic value, and with 20% of the water is produced 80%. So the use of water for different crops is totally different. This is very important. For instance, in Spain, it's meaningless. You are using water, surface water, groundwater to produce wheat or cotton. That is ridiculous. It has no meaning. This can be produced in other countries and be bought in Spain even more cheaper than is produced in Spain. But the water should be used for the important uses. So the hydrological footprint, I think, is a concept very important. In my opinion, the water problems in the world require to consider also this idea, not only for water, but the hydrological footprint and the international trade of virtual water. That concepts are not really very much related to groundwater, but they're very, very important. I think groundwater should be put in this area very, very well, because usually most of the, at least in Spain, the crops, well, the crops, because agriculture is the mainly use of water, I think all over the world. And, and, and I think that still there are many countries, for example, in Spain, 80% of the water is used to produce crops that are cheap, that could be bought even cheaper than produced in Spain, and uses the water in Spain to produce high-value crops like orchard, etc., etc. So there is a great area of improving the economics. I think it's very important to consider that economics and unemployment, because employment is other aspect very important in agriculture, well, in irrigation. So there are a lot of areas that can improve a lot in the next year. I think that your initiative is very positive in that. And water quality is very, very important, really.
Okay.
What Ramon said is true, but you have to be careful because things are more complex, usually much more complex than a simple analysis of the system. We need now a hydrogeology that is not practiced only by geologists, engineers, but also by economists, social specialists, lawyers. And well, this is the situation really in North America. It's the situation. Most of the geological problems are not in the hands of true. And this is an important thing to be covered in the groundwater project, to arrive to these people and to supply to these people the material they need. I can tell you that several years ago I was approached by a young lady that was a lawyer that was preparing a new version of the water law, and he was charged with groundwater. And at that time, I was in the geological survey, and she told me, "Well, come here. Nice to meet you. Because can you explain what is groundwater?" Well,
really?
well, this is becoming a common situation. And my experience in Spain is this. Most of the problems now, technical problems I am involved, in the bottom, there is administrative, legal problem. The same in Argentina, the same in Chile, the same in many parts of Brazil,
Yes.
not to say in Mexico. In Colombia, it's becoming a very serious problem. Then we have to adapt the project to solve, to help these persons to make connections, and to say people that now there are no the single specialists. There are the team, and how to work in a team in which the different knowledge has to be put together. The lawyers know this very well. The only thing is that they lack the hydrogeologists. What we have to do is to include hydrogeology in the teams of lawyers, administrators, managers.
Yes, I agree. Very important. Well, we'll have domains that we're trying to reach for people that are not hydrogeologists, are not specialists, because the whole idea is actually to bring groundwater and hydrogeology to people that are not hydrogeologists. You are completely correct in your point, and it's not an easy task. You know that.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not an easy. If you look at the participants in meetings when it was possible to meet, there is a shift. 20 years ago, were geologists, civil engineers, some agricultural engineers, not more. Now you look at the list and you see a lot of professions, different professions, ecologists, lawyers, administrators, and they are interested and they make very nice contributions because they have learned about groundwater.
Yeah. Correct. Yes. Well, we hope we'll reach out to these people with your help. Actually, we as you know, we're all the books that we're publishing initially in English, but we have people working on the internet to translate, volunteers. And it's amazing that we had already offering from 33 languages to translate books, which is very good because we can have a reach to people that doesn't speak English very well, right? This is quite important for people who doesn't speak English, and to reach out people out of science only, we have to go that way. The Spanish community, Spanish speaking community is very big. It's very big, right? And we have many volunteers from Spanish speaking countries.
Spanish and Portuguese.
And Portuguese, yes, Portuguese as well.
Yeah, and sometimes Italian. There is a light audience, if you look. And now we don't have much connections with Africa, but there is Mozambique and Angola. There are very nice potential people that start to develop.
But we have lots of people participating from Asia as well. Not only Africa, many, but lots from Asia, from the Arabic-speaking countries, many of them. So it's taking off the project, which is very good. So we hope that our project have a little bit of success, just like your book had.
Okay.
Right? That would be a great success for us already.
You will have all my support, but as Ramon said, now I am becoming full of years, and little by little I have to slow down.
But you're still doing a great job. I see you in events. You're still doing a great job. You're very, very good. Okay, so our time is up here. I would like you to make your final statements. If you have something to say to people, to young professionals, people that are starting in groundwater, if you have to say something, please, that's the time.
Ramon first.
Ramon.
I'd like to add one question. Now people are speaking a lot about the climate change. This is something that we have not considered here. I think that groundwater analysis is very important. Nobody knows really what is going to happen. Well, there is a big discussion to what point the CO2 is the main cause of the climate change or not, because climate change has been always in this planet. But the question is that the way to solve the problems with the climate change lies, in many cases, in the better use of groundwater. So I think because of climate change, it's going to be very important. Well, groundwater is not infinite, so it is limited. So not always all the problems of climate change can be solved with groundwater. But in any case, it's very important. It's going to, in my opinion, it's going to require a bigger effort to know the role of groundwater solving the climate change problems. And the question is the hydrological footprint, because it's much related. So groundwater or groundwater uses is not illimited, it has limited. But the international trade or hydrological footprint is also very important. All these questions has to be considered together in order to get a general view of the problem. This is a new area, in my opinion, is very important. So, but in any case, a better knowledge of groundwater is going to be required in the next years in most of the countries, in my opinion. And this can be, for instance, let me explain. In Spain, almost every day you can know the situation of the 1,400 surface water reservoirs. You can know everything, the level of the water has been released or in the entrance, but you know very little about the groundwater reservoirs. There is not a similar statistics about that. This, in my opinion, this is very important to change the mind of the people. It's not only there are more water stored under the surface of the earth than on the conventional reservoirs. So this is something that at least in Spain has not entered in the mind of the water planners. You can, in Spain, you can read almost every day in many of the papers the situation of the reservoirs of Spain, surface water reservoirs, but nothing about the groundwater because it's not so easy to measure. But this is, in my opinion, this is going to change. We have to consider all the things together, otherwise it's difficult to do a good manage. Well, so there are, for the young people like you, and there is a lot of work to be done. Well, I have almost finished. I know that probably my contribution to the next field is going to be practically nil, because, well, I will be 90 years old this year, so that's enough. Okay. Congratulations again by your initiative. You are the young people pushing the situation. I think it's very good. And you will find many people ready to work in this.
Thank you. Thank you. Emilio.
Well, I think being a hydrogeologist or groundwater hydrology is great because we put everything together. Even agriculture, the unsaturated zone, many other things. We are not specialists in floods, but we understand floods. And well, this is a nice opportunity that we have to use very carefully because there is a scale, a problem of a scale. Usually, classical hydrogeologists, they work in the using as time the day, the month, but we use the day and the century and the million years, and we have to use this very carefully and wisely, and it obliges to think on the systems in a way that other parts of hydrology didn't bring to us. And also we have an ethical and moral obligation to think that what we are doing, what we are receiving, what we are deciding now is not for this generation, but for the next and the other generation. Perfect. And then we are receiving something that is changed, and we will change more, and the next one will to deal with this. And I think this is a nice exercise of living in this world, taking into account not only the three geometrical dimensions, but the fourth dimension. And in some cases, this fourth dimension at this time is a short one, sometimes it's a very long one. And this is mixed with quality. Quality is not something that can be measured taking a sample, but it's something that we have to project the evolution on time. And this is a challenge. We don't know really how to do this at that moment. We can describe, we can make a photo, but we cannot describe the full system. This is a good challenge we have to use, and the new generations need we do this.
Okay, thank you very much. Our time is done here. I would like to thank you very much for your contribution. Again, it's a very, it's a great opportunity for me. It's an honor and a pleasure talking to you. You are a reference for many hydrogeologists of my age and much younger and older, because your book is still there and people are studying on that. And I hope we still have, many hydrogeologists having the opportunity to see your interview, to meet you both for the great work and the great contribution that you've done for groundwater in general. So let's start. We have people from Caracas, from Kashmir, from so many places. Let me see. First one is the first question, and it actually is a message from Adeobani Bras
Da Silva.
He says, in the first edition of the book, Hidrología Subterránea, 2,263 pages, there are references to Olinda, Pernambuco, Brazil, from Custodio, when I was there, when I was there. Okay, so he sent you hi and asked you to say something about your experience in Brazil at that time, long ago.
Well, it was a nice time at that time. I was young, I have not much experience, and I have the opportunity of knowing not only new things. The area was very interesting, was the area close to the San Francisco, and then from Olinda, was the coastal aquifer. Was very interesting to know about the coastal aquifer and how it was evolving at that time. But also I met a group of excellent hydrogeologists, very interested in field work. And well, it has passed, I don't know how many years, probably 40 or more than 40 years. And I keep a good memory of these people, and I consider they're good friends.
Yes, that's what he says. He says hi to you. There's lots of good messages here. People from Kelly Melissa saying hi from Cusco, Peru to you. We have, let me see more things here. Nestor Liñares says, dos grandes hombres de cantares que hacen camino al andar. Muy bueno. They'll try to translate that. Two great men that open a path when they walk. That's very nice. That's very nice saying.
But the letter of the song is also excellent. It's excellent because we have to start with the axis crying. And in many cases, still our axes are crying because there are many new things.
Come on. Okay, Nestor Liñares says that it will be interesting to see a third edition updated to our times. Is there any chance to that happen?
Well, I don't know because I am 81 and Ramón Llamas is 89. I think we have no much opportunity even to communicate. I cannot walk, almost I cannot walk. Ramón Llamas has stuck in the head, and well, but we will try. But we continue to produce things.
Oh, I know.
But
I know.
what I am doing now is just to make things available directly from the university online. That it's much better for people.
That's very good for us. And it's good because you were here in a Brazilian Congress, so you're still traveling. That's very, very good for us that you're still active. Good for all the people that learned from you and are still learning. Thank you. I have a message from José Paulo Neto, is the president of the Brazilian Groundwater Association. It says, Dear Emilio and Ramon, I would like to thank and congratulate you both for the very important contribution of your set of works for science and groundwater, and for the special attention that Custodio has given me and Nabas. I hope to be able to meet you this year in Brazil or Brussels. Sincerely, José Paulo, President of the Brazilian Association.
Okay, thank you very much. I was a member of ABAS, and now I continue to be a member of ABAS. For me, something excellent, because it was an opportunity to contact a big number of professionals with an orientation that is at the same time scientific and applied. And it has been a very nice opportunity. And Paulo Neto is really an excellent person, pushing with people around that I like very much. And I know these people for many years. We cannot say that in South America, probably there are borders politically, but there are not borders scientifically.
That's very true. That's very true. We're all friends in hydrogeology. That's very good. Very good. This is, and it's good to meet people in congresses, right? It's fun to have people in presence. Okay, so I have a message here from All River. My dear friends Emilio and Ramon, it's great seeing you so active and very clear and fresh ideas. You are titans. I cherish the lucky moments I spent working with you. All the best, Alfonso River.
Yes, it's also a very old friend. We met several times, and well, it's how we do some collaborations. We did some collaborations, and well, it's a good friend. He came to our course in Barcelona as in the French cooperation, and we got with this visit a very nice friend.
Very good, very good. So, thank you, Alfonso, for your participation. José Luis García Arostegui, enhorabuena por la iniciativa Making Groundwater Visible. Un fuerte abrazo a los ponentes. Un abrazo a Emilio y Ramón.
Yes, also is a person working in a very complex place of Spain with groundwater mining, with enormous water mining, drawdowns in some cases more than 500 meters. And it's something that is an example to be exploited more in the world, how you can develop an area using groundwater mining, and how to substitute this in the future. And now the challenge is that little by little with the water plants, we have to change groundwater depletion with new resources. And they are doing this with desalination, with reuse, with changes of crops. And I recommend very much to study the case of Murcia, that is a world interesting example.
Very good, thank you, thank you. I have a question for you myself.
Yeah.
Is it possible someday to distribute your book for free? Because it's a Bible for all the Spanish-speaking community, and it's a huge community. I understand the problem, but in the future, someday,
we approached several times the editor, and he gets money with the book. Still, he gets some money, and then they don't want to make it free. But I know I have a free book. I got in Peru a free book, a copy. I know that there are copies around, pirate copies.
Oh,
But,
I know, but that's the pirate copies. We cannot distribute the pirate copies.
No, but somebody asked something about this with to us, Ramon and me, and in order to make some complaint, they say, oh, we don't complain on this. It helps people. If the editors get some money, for me it's okay. If people copies it, for me it's okay.
I understand. It's for authors, is the more readers, the better, right?
Yeah. The only thing is that the book is in some chapters. It's very old. Part of the hydrogeochemistry, isotopes, desalination, and so on, just was at that time was just starting. Now, what we have in the book is the first steps. There are much more development after that that is not reflected. Then the book now necessarily has to be complemented with new material. But hydraulics, it's the same. It has not changed.
Yeah, exactly. Hydraulics is the same. I agree with you. Well, but that's the same. This is what happened with the freeze and cherry book as well. It's a bit outdated. Contamination. Some points are outdated, and remediation. All these new technologies that appear, they're not there. So the idea of the groundwater project is what started by trying to update the original book. So what we would like you to help us is to convince your students, because you have so many all over the world, to help us updating the material, because your material is so good. We can do that. We can help you.
Yes, but we need specialists. Now hydrogeology, that it was a very restricted science, that almost the specialty of some people now is so broad that it's impossible to be in all the fields. Now, we have lobbyists that are in the IEH.
Yeah.
And people said, who is doing a lawyer in the IEH? Is doing a nice thing, a nice role. We need these people. We need economists. We need biologists. We need social people. And now hydrogeology has something to do with geology, but geology is only a part, and each time it's becoming a smaller and a smaller part of hydrogeology.
You are so right. You are so right. From your experience, we were discussing this, and this is one of our main difficulties. How can we talk to non-hydrogeologists? We talk, because we're always talking among ourselves, and we have people from other areas that are coming to our area, and they're enlarging the knowledge in groundwater related things. But how can we talk to like a regular people that they know how important groundwater is?
This is something that we have not solved, and it's difficult for us to solve. We need other people to translate our thinking to the other people. But in many cases, things are changing, because in the European Framework Directives, we have to make plans by basins. And when you have no problem in the basin, you have only floods and rivers for water transportation and so on. This is the common hydraulics. But when we move to the south, we move to half of Spain, scarcity is the definition. And when you have scarcity, people don't understand very much, but are interested. And little by little in the news and the newspapers, in the media, the word aquifer is commonly used, water reserve, depletion, and so on appears. Perhaps they are poorly used or wrongly used.
Yeah.
Our role in that case is not to expand more the knowledge, but to say people how to use correctly the concepts.
Yes, I totally agree. I have another question for you. You have been spreading groundwater knowledge for so many years, and you have talked to journalists, right? How can you make them understand what is groundwater? For you, in Spain, in a region that you don't have many rivers, people are used to see or to have wells to their water. But for places where you have lots of surface water, they don't see the wells. So it's very hard to get into the culture. What's your experience about that? Because you travel so many places, especially in Latin America, where we have some very humid regions as well.
I have had very nice experiences in Argentina, in Uruguay, in Chile, because the journalists I have talked to, they understood me, and they translated this quite well. But in other places, they translate things completely wrong. It depends on the place. It depends on the problems they have. If they have a problem, a serious problem, usually they translate the new quite correctly. This is my experience. In Spain, it's very variable. But now at that moment, newsmen try to explain things correctly. And we had very hot spots in which when we read, things are not exactly this, but it's a good approach.
Yeah. I have a message here from Fluker Peña. Qué gusto escucharlo, doctor Custodio. Ojalá pronto vuelva al Perú. Sus libros y artículos aportan mucho a la geología en Lima, Perú.
Yes.
Nice place, Lima.
Last time I met him, last time I met him, he was in Ica, in Peru. That is also it's very nice, excellent in the world, and how to use groundwater in a very dry, in a hyper-arid area. And he invited me many years ago to give 2 courses in Lima, and it was a good opportunity to contact these people. The topic was on isotopes in hydrology, but for me, isotopes is not a subject, it's just a tool. And I use this course to promote groundwater, and it was quite well, because people were very interesting. And after that, I have several contacts with Peru, very successful, but not in all Peru. In some parts of Peru, there are good friends, and we did some things. In other parts, they still are in pure academics that don't apply exactly to the area where they are. They apply hydrogeology of rainy areas to the desert, and it's not true.
Yes, good. So your most of your experience are in Spanish, are not only in Spanish speaking community. You work in different places. One point that we're stressing with the groundwater project is that we try to translate books into other languages, because it's much more comfortable when you speak your mother tongue, let's say, right? So how do you see that? You speak a very good English, But what do you say, what do you think about this translation and how to reach people by translating the books? And the other thing is, would it be possible to translate your book into other languages? Because you have a very good experience with English, right?
Our book was translated into Italian 10 years ago. We don't know the success of this because an Italian can read Spanish directly without translation.
Sort of.
I can say yes,
because not todo. Como los brasileños.
When I was a student, part of my books in the career were in Italian. And after 2 weeks, you were able. But I have an excuse because I am also Catalan speaking, and Catalan is closer to Italian. Then, yeah. Well, translation is needed. It's true. It's true. The problem is that Castilian and Portuguese are so widespread languages that they are directly used to many people. When you go to languages more restricted, it's more difficult to have enough interest in somebody to publish and in spreading it. I don't know. But we started with this. When we started in Spain, the only literature available we had was the French books of Castanin, a well-known book, not so well-known, but very excellent of Margat, and the excellent book of Scherer. The book of Scherer was never translated, but the book of Castanin was translated into Castilian and was also translated into Portuguese, and it helped us a lot to start. Yes. Then the translations they are useful, but when I know at that time, many people don't know that in the 50s there were one book in Romanian that was excellent. I could read because Romanian, if you go more or less carefully, you can.
The Latin language is also another Latin language, right?
Yes, and well, you have a lot of literature that is not known to other people, but there were very nice things, and we learn a lot, not in hydrogeology, but in physics and in maths, from the Russian translations. The program of Russian translations that was made mostly in Mexico was an excellent tool, an excellent help for us in maths, in physics, and well, it is useful. Yes, it is useful, and you have to do this, but you have to be careful with language, the use of terms, not to introduce into the language unnecessary bad translations or wrong translations. That is a big problem. Then you need something that knows the topic, and this is the
yes, definitely, yes. Well, but one point. Well, we discussed some things about the translations because we know when we change into a different language, you think differently, right? Because languages cover the subjects differently. So
yes,
it's translating is more than just changing words, right? You have to bring into the local way of thinking. And science is maybe easier sometimes, right? Because it's if you're explaining science, you don't have too much creation on text, but still it's difficult. One point that you mentioned that I'd like you to comment is, yes, we don't have as many experts of groundwater in so many languages. So if you go to a language that is not, that doesn't have so many speakers, it's harder. But one thing that we are realizing as we work in a groundwater project is that people are willing to translate, you know, experts, because they have students and they do know the difficulties of using foreign books. You have to, you know, learn the subject on another language. It's an extra effort for students, right? So we are having a good result. Lots of people are offering to translate books. And if you're watching here us today, please, you guys that are watching our audience, please, you know, volunteer to translate books. This is so important and so good. So what do you think about that? Wouldn't the students, like graduate students, be able to do that? Because that's something, you know, it's a good exercise.
Yes, I think so. I think so. But you need people with some training before. Say people that is in a doctorate and is close to finish. Then this student knows how to use the words and the meanings, and he knows their own language. That is now the problem, that many students don't know their own language. They can do the right thing, but you have to be sure, because what we are found now in Spanish, by example, is that they are introducing a lot of new terms that we don't need. They exist in the language, and they are more precise even than the translation they are trying to introduce. And then you need an advanced student that likes language. And the problem is that the current system in the school it doesn't favor the knowledge of the own language.
Yes, it's a problem. Writing properly in your own language, it's an art. You have to study, you have to read a lot, not only science, you have to read a lot, because then you can communicate properly in your own language. That's a difficulty. I understand. I had so many students. I agree with you. They have very good thinking in science, but many of them couldn't write properly their ideas. That's very common. You are correct. Well, but you know, one of the things with internet is that we have way more people that we can talk to than usually we have on university. University, we have few students, but when we reach out to people in the internet, we're talking to thousands of people. So it's hopefully it's easier to find good writers in the thousands than it is in university. I hope.
I hope so.
Yes. Okay. So our time it's up here today, and I'd like to thank you very much, Emilio. You're always very kind. You do a great job in in communicating groundwater to people all over the world. Congratulations for you and Ramon for the great book. As I mentioned at the beginning of our interview, I had the honor and the pleasure to interview you both, because like people said here, you're our heroes. You know, you put the knowledge in place and make our lives easier for us. We're working on that for people like you and John Cherry that put the books in place for us. Thank you very much.
It has been a pleasure being with you and all the audience here, and I expect that the project you are starting now will be a success. In a few years will be a big success, because we need it. And the difference, as I told you in the conference, in the talk, is that people have tried to do this several times, but they lacked internet. Now with internet, the problem of distribution, that for me is the major problem, will disappear. And what is interesting is to put into internet good things.
You are correct. You are correct. That's what we're doing, and we count on you to help us. You're always helping us, and we still count on you for so many years to come. Okay, thank you very much.
I will be ready all the years God will give to me.
Well, I hope that we'll have plenty of them, 20, 30 more. Don't worry. I hope we'll be together. Okay. Thank you very much, Emilio. You're very
Bye bye. Bye bye to everybody.
Thank you. Bye.